the 10th son and made it a day of feasting and gladness.
Right, so this is a memorial now that we're commemorating because this is how we were saved from our destruction, right? By defending ourselves, right? So, go ahead, continue.
Verse 19. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. Verse 20.
Right, so we turn a negative into a positive. We turn something that was once negative, and we change it into something that, we now glory in. Because the Most High delivered us from that destruction. Continue.
Verse 20. And Mordecai wrote these things, and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far. Verse 21. To establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly. As the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another and gifts to the poor.
So sending portions one to another and gifts to the poor, right? So this is our version of what the world would call, Christmas, right? We don't celebrate Christmas. So this is our time to send portions one to another, to give our gifts one to another, and to also remember the poor, right?
Okay.
Continue.
Verse 23. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them. Verse 24. Because Haman the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is, the lot, to consume them, and to destroy them. Verse 25. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his son should be hanged on the gallows. Verse 26. Wherefore they call these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them. Verse 27. The Jews ordained and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year. Verse 28. And that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation.
And that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, right? Come on.
Every family,
every
province,
and
every city.
So no matter where you're at, this is the memorial, so this is to be followed from generation to generation.
Okay.
We are to pass this down to our children. We're not to get involved in the pagan Christmas days or the pagan holidays. We have our own feast days. We have our own set of laws that we don't have to now succumb to the laws of the land, right? Because Mordecai didn't bow down. So why do we feel that we have to be subservient to what this world offers, right? Continue.
Okay.
And that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed.
Continue.
Verse 29. Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. Verse 30. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews, to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, with words of peace and truth. Verse 31. To confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matters of the fastings and their cry. Verse 32. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book.
So it was written now, right? So this is now our memorial. This is why we celebrate Purim, right? In commemoration of what we were saved from, and what Esther did, and how the Most High preserved us through that particular time.
Okay.
Continue.
This is the book of Esther, chapter 10, verse 1. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea. Verse 2. And all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the king of Media and Persia? Verse 3. For Mordecai the Jew was next unto the king Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed.
Right now, this is where it ends in the Bible, right? But is this the end of Esther? No, right? This is why they took out the Apocrypha. In the Apocrypha, it picks up at chapter 10, verse 4, right? And that's a whole nother separate lesson in and of itself, because it goes into they're tracing the lineage of what Amalek was, and in the Apocrypha it reveals that Amalek is actually the Macedonians, right? So it shows you that lineage, and this is why they had to take out the Apocrypha. But one thing that's interesting observation about the book of Esther, that we find in the Bible without adding the Apocrypha in, is that not once throughout all those chapters was the Most High mentioned, right? You didn't see "Thus saith the Lord." You didn't see "and the Most High put the Spirit." The Most High wasn't mentioned. But does that mean that the Most High wasn't at work? No, because it shows you, and that's the beauty about it, because it shows you that the Most High, no matter if He's mentioned or not, is always acting in our favor. He's always in the backdrop, looking out for His people, regardless of their situation. Right, so we can look in the stories and look in the circumstances of how He dealt with certain things to know that the Most High was present.
Right. So now being
all praise to the Most High. So we'll have to do a part 2 going into the Apocrypha, because that's a whole nother lesson in and of itself. But this was just a recap of the story of Purim and the story of Esther, just to give an understanding of why we celebrate Purim, right? Let's get ready. Questions?
Yes, I noticed where it talks about Pur. It was one day that when they dedicated to the removal of the Jews, right?
Right.
It was just one day.
Well, it wasn't just one day. It said it was they looked to destroy them for at least 13 days. It said 1 to even the 13th day.
Okay.
So it was a multiple situation. They wanted to exterminate all the Jews out of the area, because that was the decree put forth.
This reminds me of the movie Purge.
Okay.
Because if I just started, I thought it was a horror film, but it was a little bit more than just a horror film. It's a cleansing that I saw going on with one of the movies, and from what I was told, the original Purge, the one that they just released recently, is the one that deals with more of the African Americans being the first to be purged. So I find that interesting that they played that, and then reading this, wondering if these two have some. It's not a coincidence that this movie has come out and then we're reading about, studying this. That's all.
I mean, Amalek is still very much present in the world, right? Because we didn't exterminate all of them, right, to our detriment. So we have to deal with Amalek until our Savior returns and He sets everything right. But question?
Is Amalek and the Jewish people Edom all the same? Is that all Amalek?
Well, Amalek is a descendant of Esau, right? He's one of the dukes of Esau.
The tribe of Esau.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, like Jacob had different tribes, and Esau also has
Right.
different sons that have different.
Okay.
Right, and he's one of the. So a Gaggite is a particular tribe from that lineage, right? And we're gonna do a part 2 and go more in detail about. We're gonna get into the Apocrypha and just go over the whole lineage of Amalek, the Gaggites, Esau. Right?
So, I got a question. So, I know there's certain holidays, days that we treat like double Sabbaths and stuff. Is Purim one of them where you treat days like the Sabbath? That seems.
Right, so it's Purim is a feast. It's a memorial. So it's not, even though we treat it as something that we remember, it's not an actual Sabbath. Right, so it's more so of a memorial. So you can work, but if you have the time, you should be celebrating your Purim, right? Right. So Purim fell in the 12th month, which is this is the understanding that we understand that February is the 12th month, right? Even by the standards of, if you look at the regular calendar by the Roman statistics, how it's worded, right? September meaning 7, right? October 8, November 9, December 10, right? So January and February would have been 11 and 12. But instead of making January and January and February the 11th and 12th, they made January the 1st, February the 2nd, and they pushed March, which has always been the first month of the year, because it's the renewal of spring, right? They pushed that to the 3rd month, so it threw the whole time out of whack. So that's where it said they would think to change times and laws, right? But it says that the month of Adar, the 12th month, right? And this is why we only dealt with numbers for our months, right? We never dealt with the particular deities that came about with the naming of the different months, because they gave worship to different gods on these different months, and even the days of the week, right? We always had numbers associated with, so first, 12, so forth and so on. Well, we did research into the calendar, and we followed the Enoch calendar, right? And with that understanding, we've come to understand, because the actual celebration of Purim fell on, I believe it was Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday of this.
Tuesday. The 19th to 21st.
The 19th to the 21st, I believe Purim fell on this year. But because we're just commemorating the time here on the Shabbat, right?
Question. Is King Ahasuerus famous for something else besides what we learned in Genesis?
So King Ahasuerus, he's also known as Xerxes. And if anyone's ever seen the movie 300, right, it speaks about King Xerxes. And he was one of the ones that he's famous for giving the people of the land freedom to practice their own religion, right, and not have to necessarily succumb under the rule of the government, right? So if you rewatch that movie 300, Xerxes was saying, you can do whatever you want, do what you do, you just got to bow to me, right? And Leonidas was like, nah. That's Leonidas said the Spartans, that's actually the tribe of Dan. Right, so they were very resilient when it came to, any type of interaction with the Persians, right? They just had that particular pride within them, right?
That's in Maccabees, right?
That can be found in Maccabees. Right.
I heard that this is off topic, but 300 was mentioned in Samuel, the verse of 2 Samuel, David. Is that where they got that from? Mighty man of the people was David, that slew, I forget what it was, but I believe that's where they got
Well, I believe that's dealing with a different situation, but the Spartans historically was the Danites, so dealing with that time when Xerxes was coming to conquer that particular land, he came across the Spartans. The mighty men of David would be a different situation, right? Because they were primarily right.
I know the tribe of Dan got cut off, right?
Correct.
But who are they today?
We're doing a lot of research. It says that Dan will be a serpent by the way, right? So a lot of times, we look at the history of like the Vikings, right? And one of their things is that their crown or their emblem is the serpent, right? They're the serpent people, and it's rumored that they actually taught the Mayans, because when the Mayans came across them, they were calling the Vikings the serpent people, right? So Dan today would be, your gypsies, right? And Lebanon, it's different instances, right? But we judge not by the outward appearance. We always got to judge by the spirit, right? But when you look at the characteristics of what Dan does, he looks to, kind of nip at his heels of his brother, right? Kind of keep his brother in a particular down state, right? So those are the characteristics that we can look out for when we're dealing with Dan, right? There'll always be a serpent by the way, something stopping us from, kind of achieving what we need to achieve. Just like Haman, right? Haman is the example of just how Amalek is always in direct opposition with Israel, right? So it would be a similitude of what Dan would be something that prevented his brother from obtaining. All right. So this time I think we're gonna have announcements. Brother, can you grab the podium and just bring it to the front? And you just hit the lights. One second. And also, we just want to thank, put it in the front there, bro. We just want to thank everybody online for tuning in with us for this Purim festival. And shalom.